gosh, I'm a professional, guys. I totally used the wrong intro video, but that's okay. We're just hanging out today. That's what it's all about. You know, it's all good. It's all good. It's okay, guys. It's okay, right?
That's
Life is good.
also going to be a great match. So, you know, like,
Of course.
you know, Jeff
Yes.
Snyder out there in white for women's suffrage, celebrating the movement. Good for him.
Mhm.
Just like,
Well,
you know, Kamala, our incoming vice president.
Oh my gosh. All right, it's definitely turning out to be a really great day, and thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with us today. This is the call to action, call to breakdown episode where we break down the match of the day, of the week, whatever the situation is. And I'm here with some pretty awesome people. Well, sometimes only one match a week, depending on the schedule. You know, you feel me? You know, I have some awesome people here today with me. I have our lovely stats queen. What's up, Megs?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Can't complain. It is very hot inside my little house right now, but that's okay. I'm going to cool down with my vino. That's what matters. And
there you go.
I got to know, where's the rock star of this entire match? Where is Taco? Where is Taco?
Taco's right. He's right behind me. He's right
there. There he is. Oh,
I don't know why, but whenever I'm live streaming, he always wants to be right behind me. I don't know what.
Of course.
But yeah,
so cute. So cute. And Juan, you're here too, obviously.
Yeah, also me. Yeah. I understand. He's the main attraction.
He is definitely the main attraction. No matter where we go, I'm thinking Taco. What is Taco doing? He's like a WWTD. What would Taco do?
It's usually this, like licking his paw until I notice and go like, stop licking your paw. Then he'll stop for a second.
Goals, man, goals. Lon,
yes. 14, so 16 much. Hours a day of that.
Well, that's what they gotta do. What else are they gonna do? We are gonna be diving into not the odd couple versus category 9. That was my mistake, putting in the wrong intro video up top, so that was my bad. So I apologize for that. We are gonna be diving into the match between Final Exam, who is currently sitting at 3-2, going up against a very brand new team. Well, not so much a rookie team, but this is their second match they've ever competed in. This match specifically. Representing the Den, it is Paul and Tam. It's not Tam, it's Tam.
Mm-hmm. This was actually my first time ever going up against Tom in any context. I've been up against Preston a few times, but never Tam.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. Now that you say that, yeah, that is very true. Yeah. Had not thought of that.
Or in any team situation. So that's increasingly rare for me. At this point, I'm doing it. This is my third season. So to come up against somebody who's established, who's been doing it a while, who I've never faced, it's increasingly rare.
It is kind of crazy to think how often that happens. Like, you like always assume, whether it be in teams or singles or whatever it might be, that you've come across each other at some point. But
right, yeah. I mean, I played a lot of between when I was with like JTE and then when I, like Final Exam now for a whole season. My brother and I went through a few tournaments. Like at this point, at least, in like a free for all or something, you would think I would have sort of faced up against most people, but there are still a few outliers.
I will
say
sounds like a little bit of.
They include still to this day, it remains possible. We'll see what happens in the future. That includes Dan Merle, my former screen junkie. We've never been up against each other in any Schmodown context.
Wow, I was going to say I was curious if there were anyone else that you haven't gone up against that maybe you would want to, but Dan would definitely be a.
Yeah, I feel like that's the key matchup that we have thus far never seen. Would be some kind of me versus Merle situation. I would be very intrigued to see how that would play out. Also, I haven't been up against him in a very long time. I would love to get another shot at Ethan Irwin. He beat me once, but it came down just to the wire, and I've always felt like that would be a great rematch situation one day. We'll see if it ever happens.
Nice.
Well, this is like, guys, heads up, spoilers.
Yes.
Just want to give you a heads up. We're going to be breaking down Yeah, definitely. Just giving you a heads up, it just debuted a little bit ago. And if you have not seen the match while you're on here, we're literally breaking down the match. That is the purpose. So we're going to be breaking down at the very beginning before even going to the match. This is not a match reaction. Just want to remind you guys, we're breaking down the match itself. We're not going to talk about the interviews, post-interviews, promos, any of that good stuff. You know, as amazing it is, that's not what we're here to do. We're going to be diving into the match itself, a little bit of the strategy. We're going to dive into very beginning, which is, Megs, what is our first segment today?
This first segment is Match My Stats. So what we are going to be doing is we're going to be breaking down what did those stats look like? What type of things were we seeing throughout this match? So let's get into it. Starting off, let's get rid of that, just so we're not covering anything up here. So what we started off with was Final Exam was leading coming out of round 1, 18-16. Both Pauls and Lon get perfect rounds. Odd having 2 Pauls in here. With Tom still able to get 7 points. Tom and Paul are given first spin at the wheel. They take comedies on their first spin. They go 8 in round 2, giving up a 2 and 1 point steal. Final Exam is able to steal the 2-pointer while also for their spinning away from Amy Adams and settling on Festival Darlings. They get 11 points, only going to multiple choice once. Final Exam is up 31-24 going into round 3. Tom and Paul land their 2 and 3-pointer, but are unable to hit the 5-pointer, giving Final Exam the win via TKO. Final score 31-29. Tom and Paul answered 22 out of 26 questions for 84.6% accuracy and attained 72% of 40 available points. Final Exam answered 25 out of 26 questions for 96.2% and attained a 93.9% of 33 available points. Quite the breakdown there, and some pretty impressive numbers by both teams.
Yes, I absolutely agree.
And they did not make it easy on you at all. Even though you were able to come away with a TKO, it could have been anyone's game at any point.
Sure, and I did not know their 5-pointer. He said Louis Gossett Jr. It was the warden. It was who plays the warden from Lockup. Yes. I remember the movie. I knew Stallone was the star. I thought for some reason James Caan immediately popped into my head, and I was like, oh, I think it's James Caan. But he said Louis Gossett Jr. I was like, that's wrong. Ha ha. But of course, I would have also missed it. It's Donald Sutherland. And Paul was right in his post-game interview where he was like, "That's a pretty obscure movie." It really is. It's not a movie I think about or would have really considered as part of like, oh, I got to refresh on my Stallones. So that's they're 5-pointers. That's a tough question. But yeah, other than that, like up until that point, it was back and forth. We're sort of trading blows.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was a pretty intense match, very consistent from the beginning. And again, guys, spoilers ahead, so you knew this going into it. I don't know what to tell you, dude. I don't know what to tell you. It's literally in the title. Now, this is this was a very interesting match because, because of the stats, reflecting, like when I was like reading through the stats, I was trying to put together my thesis. And the next segment of this episode, which is Match Thesis, we really going to dive into, like I said, our big, bold idea, regarding this match, the biggest this, the best that, the worst that, the whatever it may be. And we really exemplify it through the entire match. Now, my thesis, this is the best match Final Exam has ever played.
I think as Paul and I work together more, we improve, and I think that we get more in sync. We get a better idea for when to trust one another, and like how gauging our comfort level with our answers. So I think we're constantly getting better.
Well, I say that because not only because of the numbers, statistically speaking, having a 93, 93% PPE. Which is that's crazy high. I don't remember the accuracy percentage specifically.
So accuracy was 96.2, which that's only one question.
For a team, that's unheard of.
We went to multiple choice on that on Julian Schnabel, and honestly, that was one where I was kind of kicking myself because as soon as I heard Before Night Falls, I did think about Julian Schnabel, but then for whatever reason, Neil Jordan also popped into my head, and I was like, yeah, like, man, I was thinking about the movie, and like, like Neil Jordan's done a lot of indie movies that are sort of politically shaded around that same era, and so then I kind of threw myself for a whirl. If I just stuck with my initial impulse, I would have been right. But when I heard his name during the multiple choice, it made total sense that would be the answer.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's been I actually say that because you guys have very consistently improving. I know you actually mentioned on your thesis from yesterday, where your thesis was the most gradually improved team match by match is The Odd Couple.
From season to season, you consistently see them improving. And Final Exam is also very similar to that. And actually, your guys' accuracy of 96.2, the only question you guys really missed was you didn't get that 1 point steal at the multiple choice.
Yes.
But with that,
Casper Van Dien. So Casper Van Dien used to do a show with us on Screen Junkies Plus years ago. So I've met him a few times, and we've discussed that movie. So in that moment, I didn't remember who played that role. But in that moment, I know that he and I have talked about Undercover Brother. And so that's actually why I was like, I think it's Casper Van Dien. I assumed he was talking about it because he was in it. But no, I guess he is just a fan.
Oh, okay.
But that is I like honestly did not. Out of those 4 guys, I could not have told you. I was just pulling the trigger on a guess.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you have to just make your best educated guess, and that would be an educated assumption. So
yeah. But I mean, as an older competitor in terms of relatively in the league and just generally, I'm relying a surprising amount of time on just having been covering movies and talking about movies and writing about movies for the past 20 years or so. So Eagle Eye was another example of, I did the red carpet for Eagle Eye and like interviewed them. And that's how I remember that Turtle from Entourage was in it, which I mentioned during the match. So a lot of the time it's a little bit less. I try to prepare and study as best I can, but there are times where I'm just like using the old noodle to recall a thing I saw once or read about once or a thing that was said in a ticket once, and that's how I know it.
Yeah. So I kind of went to kind of jump into my thesis real quick. I went to the other side of this match and have that Tom and Paul are the best team to not win a match this season.
This season.
I mean, look, as
how many other teams are there?
What?
How many other teams are there that haven't won?
Well, you had Cuckoo's Mess. You had I'm just thinking.
Oh yeah.
I'm just thinking of like other teams that played at the beginning of the season that we haven't really necessarily seen back.
I think their team record doesn't reflect their strength, especially as individual competitors. I mean, both of them are pretty deadly as singles competitors. I do think there seems to be something like that. This match, they seem to kind of have off. They weren't communicating maybe as fully as you'd want to on some of those questions. That's a real advantage for Paul and I. Like, and you could tell. Like, there was one time where. Like I would have missed that Precious question, even though I know that movie and have seen it, because as soon as they said singer, I was like, Mariah Carey. I remember that she was in that movie and she's a singer. Immediately, you're like, that's the right answer. And I knew as soon as Paul said Lenny Kravitz, I was like, oh, he's right. He's the nurse, Mariah Carey's the teacher. But in the moment, I would have just blurted out Mariah Carey like a big dumb idiot and gotten it wrong. So like that's a time where I think it's the talking back and forth that saved me. And we got that question right. And I think that, I don't know if it was character work or, Paul was sort of doing his sedate bit and Tom does, which is hilarious, Tom's bit, or if it was just they were having an off day that they really didn't know. I don't presume to know what was going on. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's a team dynamic issue or what, but that does seem to me like it was reflected in how well they did in round 2. Watching it now, because I didn't see it live. That's only me watching it after the fact.
There is something to be said for you guys have played together in a studio, like together, and Paul, and you guys have played.
Once. Paul and I only were partnered for
played
one
once,
match this year,
absolutely.
but we were like in person.
But also, you guys have played, including this match, you guys have played 5 matches, I want to say.
Yes.
Overall,
sounds right.
Total. Yeah, total. And, and Paul and Tom, they've only played, including these matches too. And I've said it from the very beginning. I'm like, these two are like powerhouses as singles competitors. Something's missing from them as a team. Like the communication isn't there. And but thing is, I don't really compare them to you guys in terms of studio and virtual matches because they actually met that day, as far as I was told. And they didn't really have a call beforehand, being like, "Hey, do you want to prep? Go over strategy, strengths and weaknesses." Right. They didn't really have that benefit the way some other teams did. And so I'm kind of curious how they prepped for this match, going into it versus the other one where they didn't really have that opportunity to do that.
There is also the issue of, and I think we've talked about this before, of Paul and I are a good match because of our age difference. He's 20 years younger than I am.
So age does play a game with that.
With this game, for sure. Every other partner I've had in other teams, like JTE or my brother, are usually around my same age, so we have a lot of overlapping knowledge. I mean, I think that you could any way to diversify a team. It's not just age. Like, I think that if you had people who came from different, social or racial or gender backgrounds, it would probably be similar. That you've watched a lot of different kinds of movies as you came up, and so you have different knowledge bases that you can tap. And I think you see that with Paul and I all the time. I was just about to use an example from a match that has not aired yet, so I'm glad I didn't do that. But there are definitely examples from this match as well. Like Before Night Falls is even an example. Like, I've got a leg up on that because it's a movie from 2000. Paul was not aware of indie dramas yet, and I was already like an adult who maybe would go see them because I like party movies. So that makes a huge difference, and it works in the reverse way too. Like, YA is the category that's like a pretty big strength for Paul because he was a young person who was
growing up with
YA material during that time period, whereas I was already like an old fart who was like, Maze running, who cares? Like, I was already too old for that. So I think that's a huge asset, and I'm not sure it's a thing. I know it's a thing that was on Winston's mind because he's very good at this and savvy when he was putting these things together. I'm not sure that's been on everybody's mind as much as it should be, that a diverse team sometimes is going to be a stronger team because you're not just falling back on the same, like, we grew up watching Van Damme and Seagal movies. Not that I'm saying that about Tom and Paul specifically, but anybody, like, two people who've been watching the same kinds of stuff their whole lives are going to have the same strengths and weaknesses.
And that just solidifies my idea on the different types of teams and why the best teams is a combination of the two. There's one movie critic and one personality, one that's older, one that's younger. It's always a combination of those 4 things. So the best team is always like, it's true. They do different things. They have different strengths, different weaknesses, and therefore they collaborate the best. Okay. We are going to be...
It doesn't necessarily, I don't mean diversity like in terms of just like Benetton ad diversity. I just mean like backgrounds and kinds of movies that you watch. Like, there are teams that have a lot of diversity that, like, when you look at them, it looks like it's, not too wildly different kinds of people. That's a lot.
Well, when I say that, I really mean that specifically. Thing is, if you're someone like Drew McQueenie, where you're a very traditional movie critic, you're more likely to be aware of festival darlings and things classics, 70s, 80s, that kind of thing. Versus if you're more like a Ben Bateman, you might where you kind of, you were born in the late 80s, that kind of thing. You just kind of have to work a little bit harder to become a pro at 60s, or at the classics in 70s. Okay, you just have, I'm not saying it's impossible for you to become a pro at those categories, It's very possible. Paul Oyama obviously is fantastic with classics. You just have to work a little bit harder.
He worked really hard at it, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Just work for it.
I also feel like I highly recommend for people, if you have the chance to partner with someone like Paul Oyama who has encyclopedic knowledge of the game, because that's something I don't have. Like I enjoyed the Schmodown before I was on it. Like I would watch it and be like, how fun. I'd like to do that someday. But I was not a devoted nor obsessive fan. And so there are people like the Oyamas who, like, he knows every match, every question. He can recall things. Like he remembers rulings and challenges and who played who and everybody's record, and it's crazy. And that is helpful because there are times where I'm like, oh, let's put dance movies up against those idiots, and he'll be like, William Bibiani's favorite kind of movie. And I'm like,
literally, right.
Literally to your butt.
So, like, having a Paulo, and I know I'm not saying he's the only one. I know there's, especially as the fan leagues begin to bubble up into the Schmodown proper more and more. I think that those kinds of people are out there, and they're deadly because they know exactly where to attack you and how to come at every scenario. Because it's just like poker. Like the more hands you play, you just get better every time.
Yeah, more familiar. Just like you just become much more familiar with the game, much more confident in the game as well. And I do think that that level of confidence is also, you guys are a much more confident team together, so compared to Tom and Paul, they're still trying to figure things out. Okay.
Yeah, at this point we're used to this back and forth, and like it's kind of a shorthand, and like I have a good sense for when he knows it versus when he's a little bit on edge, and the same vice versa.
Exactly, and that just takes time. That's all you can do, and like when you kind of look for that. We are going to be diving into the match itself, guys. So I just want to give you a heads up, spoilers, and also. Duh.
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Come on now. We are going to be diving into the match itself, so I'm going to go and take this off real quick. But could you please maybe pull up the screen? Okay. Now, we are going to have the volume off during this whole process. Just want to get you guys to get a heads up, and we're going to be skimming through all the promos and all that fun stuff, and just going to be chatting along, going with these questions. Now, this is a very great first round.
Oh, yes.
For everyone, Lon.
Yeah.
Now, obviously,
has a very strong first round.
Yeah, like 4 powerhouse competitors, singles and teams are present on the screen, obviously. Now, going through this, like, are you kind of getting a little bit, you're starting off, what are your feelings, going into this match against these two really great competitors?
I mean, my feeling in round one is always pretty much the same, which is you've got to stay in the game and where you want to be. You've got to get perfect or near perfect. Like to me, this is the highest pressure round of the whole game, which is counterintuitive because I think the questions are easiest in this round. But it's also there's no room for missteps or mistakes. You've got to if you drop 2 or 3 questions in round one, all of a sudden now you're back. You're on your heels for the rest of the match, and that's a really crummy feeling. And I feel like momentum-wise, that can really put you at a disadvantage. So
absolutely,
I really feel a lot of pressure here to because sometimes, and I'll tell you this happened. It might have been my very first match or one of my very first matches. The question was, who plays Captain Barbosa in the Pirates of the Caribbean series? And immediately, it's Jeffrey Rush.
It's Jeffrey Rush,
And immediately I could imagine Barbosa, and I was like, that guy. And I started even going through his filmography in my head. I was like, his big breakthrough was in Shine. He plays the Marquis de Sade in Quills. I know who it is, but I just couldn't get my head around Jeffrey Rush. And I missed that question. And that haunts me to this day. Not because I can't believe I don't even remember if I won or lost that game or what game it was. But the idea of that happening is because that can always happen. It's it's not that I don't know it. I've seen those movies a bunch of times. I know who Jeffrey Rush is. But that can always happen. You just miss a question and you don't know why. And my match against the Coyote, Mr. Collins, as much as I'd love to forget that unpleasantness, that happened to him in the first round. The question was, what was the first collaboration between Harrison Ford and Steven Spielberg? You're not going to tell me he doesn't know that that's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Of course he does. In that encyclopedia of a mind, like it's ridiculous. It's just sometimes in the moment, like it's the way our brains are connected. So that's what I'm really, if I'm being perfectly honest, that's what I'm thinking about in round one. It's not that I'm afraid I'm not going to know some of this stuff, because most of these questions I know. It's just like, am I going to have a moment where I just lapse and forget what I think I should know?
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, it can be very difficult, especially like you being working the industry that you do. Obviously, you naturally, and I'm sure in everyday conversation, you just actually be like, if someone might ask you, like a friend or family member, might be like, "Hey, who's that guy in that movie?" kind of thing, and you might be like, "Oh, this person." And sometimes you have that information a little more surface level, but other movies, like other actors, like sometimes even character actors, especially, like Jeffrey Rush, sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra time. And sometimes we're like, there's like when we were talking about the Marty Scorsese adaptations, I was like, my first thought was like, obviously, Cape Fear. Yes, 100%. It was like so surface level to me, but, and then I was like, well, it's Age of Innocence. But the point is, I would have never got to the real, like, actual answers. I would have totally got that wrong. And it's so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes too. It's just the way your mental pathway to the answer is different than the way you're being asked. There was in one of the free for alls. I think it was free for all 3. The question was Ridley Scott was the category, and the question was, this Ridley Scott film features Julianne Moore, Gary Oldman, and Ray Liotta. And I couldn't pull it. And I was going through Ridley Scott movies in my head and trying to fit those actors in. And the answer is Hannibal. And it's just because he didn't say Anthony Hopkins. And that's my way into thinking about Hannibal. It's not that I've seen Hannibal and I remember Hannibal. I just didn't put it together in the amount of time allotted. And it's like, hey, that's going to happen sometimes. So that's always like the round 1 issue. More so like round 2 and round 3, legitimately, there are often questions where I just don't know them. Like sometimes Paul does and he saves my butt. And sometimes if I get to multiple choice, I can guess and get there. But yeah, like legitimately, there aren't a lot of round 1 questions where I just straight up, no idea, don't ask me, I've never heard of this. It happens. But usually it's more like, and I just can't get there, Or
You're
I
human.
think of the wrong thing and assume it's right and don't think enough about it.
Well, you're both tied right now. So you're at, everyone across the board has a perfect 4 points.
I mean,
obviously,
Waterworld and stuff. Come on, great movie. I'm not gonna forget.
Yeah, totally Oscar worthy, right? Totally snubbed.
Like Waterworld, one of those movies that got beat up because it lost a lot of money. But now when you go back and watch it, like, who cares that this movie 25 years ago lost a lot of money? It's fun. Like we get to enjoy a degree of the consideration of like, oh, this was a big sinkhole for the studio. The original atoll sunk into the sea. It's long forgotten.
It's definitely, it's one of those movies. I feel like a lot of people, like you said, they associate almost exclusively with the whole financial situation, but people forget it's such a weird movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also like a really risky movie to make.
Oh yeah.
When you put it in perspective a little bit, just how weird it is. It's like I don't know who was a person who'd be like, okay, we're clearly going to make $1 billion because Kevin Costner is in it, coming off hot off of Dances with Wolves kind of thing.
Star. People forget now because he's like kind of this goofy old man and he plays granddad roles. But like there was that moment where, because he'd already in the 80s, he was like heartthrob, rom-com, movie star, and like JFK and stuff. But then he did Dances with Wolves, and it's like, oh, this guy's also like a serious, like he's gonna be like a filmmaker now too. And so people were like really into Kevin Costner for a while, and it took like a few of these big flops to sort of for him to lose kind of his way. Field of Dreams too, like. Just some huge
don't you diss Field of Dreams, man. I love
Field of Dreams is good.
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
I mean, he was good. Like he was good. You know, Bull Durham
Yeah.
was really good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Great, yeah. Can't forget Tin Cup.
Tin Cup, sure.
Oh, God.
So
It's
now we've got
for sports rom-coms or something. It's something crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the one Eagle Eye that I mean, maybe I would have remembered it anyway, but I definitely knew it because I did promotion for it when it came out.
right.
Yeah. So
this was the
Paul apparently is a big fan. We talked about this afterwards because we both pulled it immediately, and he was like, "Yeah, I saw that like 3 times in theaters. I really liked it." So there you go.
It's a great movie. It's solid. Very underrated.
yeah.
It's a thriller.
Is it? I don't think I've revisited it since I saw it that time in the theater.
It was fairly big when it came out, but yeah, I don't hear it brought up super often unless you're specifically talking about the main actor's filmography.
Yeah, it was one of those cases where I was glad that it was a thing that I knew because of a personal reason, because I'm not sure I would have just pulled it randomly from knowing it, just having seen it.
So this is the point where you guys do start pulling away, which opens up the door for these double
the team. State of Fear, which I'm not sure what that is. State of Fear.
Haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, I know he might have just made that up. And this one I know is Rango, even though I'm not
Rango.
sure
Rango.
I don't think I've seen Rango. I think I just know it just from directors is a very strong category for me. Just I'm not sure why I know that. I like pay attention to who makes what, I guess. So as soon as it was like animated Gore Verbinski, I think this is the only animated movie he's ever directed. So
it's true. It's also an Oscar winner.
Yeah, so it stands out in my mind just for that reason, and that's how I knew it right away.
And is it the only one that Johnny Depp's been in that's animated as well?
As far as I know.
I believe Johnny Depp plays Sherlock Gnomes.
Is that him?
Oh,
okay, that would make sense though.
Say that he does.
Yeah.
Let me know in the comments if I'm right. I think I am.
That's possible.
He would. That's also it. Well, also wait. Doesn't he also do a voice in Corpse Bride?
Yes, he does. He does. He voices the main character, the fishmonger's son. Yeah, absolutely.
Multiple Johnny Depp animated.
See, look at you. Look at you,
Lon.
There you go. Yeah. See, now this is just so impressive. Not only is it's already really difficult, obviously, for one competitor to get a perfect score, but to get 4 competitors that are right there.
3 going perfect plus the bonus. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And the 4th competitor, it's like 1 point difference. Oh,
I've said this on several shows now. It's no secret I feel this way, but like honestly, we're reaching a point in this league where almost everybody is like a very elite movie trivia player. Like you're getting these combinations of people where they're just like almost nobody's missing questions. Like to compete in this tournament in general, no matter what level, round 1 and on, you basically need to be able to almost perfect these matches. Like you can't really miss a lot of questions and remain competitive at this point in the game. It's really, I mean, I think that the fan leagues have made the matches, the overall population a lot stronger. I think people are starting to work at it in their off hours and study, and especially this season where we're all locked in our homes for a lot of the time. I think that has increased the amount of time that people are training and prepping. And I think that's we're really starting to see the impact in terms of like it's just harder and harder to remain competitive. You really can't miss a lot of questions.
No pressure. Absolutely no pressure. We are going to be diving into the next round, which is the spin is in. The spin is in. And so real quickly, Megs, can you tell us what the categories for this wheel are for this wheel?
Yes. For this wheel, we ended up with comedies, directors, Pixar, Nora Ephron, Harrison Ford, Festival Darlings, Amy Adams, historical epic dramas, our favorite, 2010s, action adventure, and of course, spinners and opponent's choice. We say it's our favorite because we want someone to hit it so we know what in the world is in this category. Since we have no clue.
I am desperate.
What's scary about it? Like I like those. I like period dramas. Like I would be inclined to say let's go for it. but it's a broad category, and as we've
It
seen
is.
time and time again, where you could draw from all of film history, you could draw from a lot of different genres would count as like period dramas. So yeah, I'm afraid of
War
it.
films.
Even at the same time as I feel like it would be fun to try, and like I'm curious as to what you get. I especially think a lot of these kinds of categories, the first few times people hit them, they're a little easier, and then you get into the harder questions. So I would like to hit it first as opposed to after it's been spun a few times.
That's very fair. And speaking of broader categories, Tom Paul decided to go with a very broad category, which is comedies.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great example of how this can sometimes get you into trouble. You saw it when I spun horror as well up against Collins. That like I feel confident in horror movies, but there's a lot of horror movies out there, and like there aren't all going to be top of mind, and there's no real way, despite what the Batemans of the world will maybe tell you, there's really no way to study for a deep category like horror. I mean, you could watch so many movies, you can only study so many fandom.com Wikia pages.
I do want to ask you real quickly. I know I'm not asking you to reveal what your strengths are, but can I take a guess at what those categories you put on the wheel?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I believe there's not a ton more damage I can really do. So sure.
Is it Pixar and Harrison Ford?
I believe I can tell you that Pixar is one of them. And Harrison Ford is not, but not because I don't consider that is a category I would consider putting on the wheel. Between Oyama and I don't feel like we would miss a lot of Ford questions. We're both fans, but no, that is not one of the other ones that we put on.
We'll get it. I'm very excited. I got the Pixar one right, though.
I would have guessed Pixar as well for you guys, considering who your partner is. That would make a lot of sense.
Paul is a confirmed Pixar freak. He loves it. And that's one that there are some things that Paul knows really well that I'm not very secure on. But that's one that I also feel pretty good about. Like, even just as a solo player, if Pixar came up on the wheel, I would be tempted to pick it. I've seen every Pixar movie. Several of them I've seen multiple times. It's one of those things like I'm pretty good at pulling like the order, like this one came out before that one came out before that one. Maybe not with the years, but so I feel pretty good about that too. So that's a good category for the both of us. I'm honestly, I'd have to see I'm not positive about what the other one we put on there for this match was.
Yeah, so
no need to tell us though.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I remember, but Pixar almost for sure, and that's one we put up before, so I feel like we could probably reveal it this.
Now, what was your? I know you said like you kind of mentioned earlier that were you surprised that they took comedies? Because obviously Paul Preston. Being an improviser, being a comedian, that kind of thing, and host, he loves comedies. That's like that's his thing. Are you surprised they ended up accepting that category, or did you kind of like freak out a little bit?
I mean, with this wheel in particular, and you'll see when we come up later, we spun off of Amy Adams, and that's not because we don't like Amy Adams, and she really doesn't have that many movies. Like, I don't think there's that many huge.
She made like less than 15.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I can answer a Junebug question, I can answer a Nocturnal Animals question. So, like, I feel like as long as that's what I'm really concerned about. The actor categories that worry me are the Meryl Streeps, not because she's not brilliant, but because it's a deep catalog, and it's like, or a Jodie Foster, or even, and this was up in a future match, but I don't have to tell you the context. Even a Viola Davis. She's been acting since the 90s, Viola Davis, and you might forget that she's in and out of sight, or that she was popping up in some of these other, like 15-year-old movies. People think of, Widows and Fences and Suicide Squad, and that's top of mind, Viola Davis. But that's a long career. Those worry me. Amy Adams is really one of those. It's really more that the rest of the wheel was kind of appealing. There were a lot of things on this wheel that I thought, if we spun them, we could probably do pretty well. So I was a little bit surprised, not because they picked comedies, but because they didn't want another crack at what I thought was a wheel that a lot of friendly spots for them. Like Action Adventure was on there, and was there like a decade? Was
Very scary category.
There was 2010s were on there.
Yeah, right. Like to me, that's pretty tantalizing. Like recent stuff. You got within the last 10 years is, to me, I feel like that's something that would be better than something really broad like comedies. But you know, I mean, that's a real roll of the dice kind of choice, because maybe you're going to get a bunch of comedy. Like I'm sure these guys have a very good handle on 80s, 90s, and aughts comedies. Like I'm sure they do. So if they get a different random jumble of questions, they probably go 6 for 6.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You just never know sometimes. You really, really don't know. When it comes to those broad categories, I always suggest to kind of steer away from that. But there have been many cases where competitors, they end up flying through those, like Roca getting Westerns, or if you look at Clark Wolf, getting horror thriller, she is flying through those, no problem. But it's very difficult to study for if you haven't like grown up with the category, essentially. Like I know,
I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and you could get thrown a curve. But it's really, I think a lot of this comes down to like that false confidence. Like nothing's a worse feeling than getting a topic you think you have a good handle on, and then that recognition in the moment of like, oh, I've gotten now 1 or 2 questions that I don't know. Maybe I don't know this as well as I thought. You're always looking to dodge that moment, I think, ideally. It's
a very deflating moment.
And it's momentum killing as well, because then you start second guessing yourself.
Well, you are about to, you say you have 2 back-to-back questions. You are about to get a huge steal, obviously, going into the second round.
A big steal I don't know exactly how I knew this, but I knew this right away. Like before they even said Los Angeles was what they guessed. Because you could, once your West Coast City and LA is eliminated, San Francisco is kind of the obvious choice. I guess it could be Portland, it could be Seattle, but maybe Vancouver. Chance, but otherwise I think it's gonna. But I knew it right away. Like as soon as I heard the question, I was like, "She's in San Francisco." I don't know how. Maybe there's a scene where she's running up a hill.
I thought Baltimore for some reason, and I was like, "Wait, wrong coast."
Ronnie's.
My memories of Sister
Wrong coast, dude.
Vague, but as soon as he was like, "What city is Sister Act?" I was like, "She's in San Francisco." And as much as I knew that one, that's as much as I had no idea who the white guy named Lance was.
This is actually, I don't want to say it's a very deceiving question, but it's a very hard question, specifically because, you don't know the answer unless you really have seen the movie. It's like a throwaway moment kind of situation. And
I saw this movie, I think when it came out, probably, but just not since it's not top of mind for me. And the question, I think, again, I can't say. A different question about this movie does come up at some point, I believe, during this tournament. But this was in a practice, so I could say I've answered a question about Denise Richards being in this movie at a practice game. Because I knew that. I could tell you Chris Kattan. I could tell you Denise Richards. I could tell
people. Will Ferrell.
Yeah, Eddie Griffin.
No, I'm thinking of I'm thinking of like Ladies Man with the oiling up the wrestling. Wrong category.
It's not that it's a total lack of familiarity. It's just I forgot that throwaway moment, and then I got mixed up because of once speaking about Undercover Brother to Casper Van Dien. And there you go.
Well, it's a great, it's regardless, you did get that steal. You had a huge, going into the third round, it is a huge moment, obviously. It's pretty fantastic. And something to remember is that I don't think at this point you've even had right now, you haven't even your second round. And you're already at 24 points.
No, we're at 20. They have 20.
They're at 20. They're at 20.
I'm sorry, you're at 20.
They have 20
points. You know how rare that is?
We're doing very well. We missed that one Undercover Brother. We missed that one Undercover Brother steal. Otherwise, we're in really good shape so far. So we're feeling good. And like I said, on this wheel, directors I feel pretty good about. Pixar I feel pretty good about. Nora Ephron I feel pretty good about. Harrison Ford I feel pretty good about. Festival Darlings I feel pretty good about. 2010s. So with all those options out there, it just felt like, you know what, I think we could do better than Amy Adams. Not a knock on Ms. Adams, who I like very much, and I feel like I could handle most of your Arrival questions if it comes down to it.
Great movie.
Right.
But not the Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Right, it's not something I specifically prepared on, so there is a chance that you could throw a curveball at me that I wasn't expecting. And so, you know, like it's really like a why take a chance. Like I thought we could maybe do better. There were only a few things on here that scared me more. Like historical and epic dramas is a little intimidating because it's a good question.
Yeah. I want that so bad. I do. I want it so bad. I want to know what movies are in there. What is the category? What does it mean to have a historical drama? Does it have to be? Does that necessarily mean a costume drama? Does that just mean a large scale movie? I don't need answers.
My sense is that yes, they would, because that's a category that's been really underserved in the Shimodan to date. My sense is that they would try to get a lot of costume dramas, maybe literary adaptations, those sorts of movies, and maybe sprinkle in a few other kinds of historical dramas as well. But like I do also think he would, like especially like ancient world epics, there really isn't a lot of great places for that stuff. So I feel like that might go in there as well. You know, like your gladiators, Conan. Yes. So well, no, I don't think that's not period.
What? It is a historical.
No, Hyboria
by definition.
is not the history of our world.
Oh, goodness gracious. But yes, needless to say, Alex and I will both be very excited if this ever comes up in a match. So
oh my gosh, can't wait.
And like, you know, put my restoration knowledge to better effect. But you know, at the same time, like if the questions are about topsy-turvy, like bang bang, but like I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of movies from that genre that I haven't seen recently. Like Vanity Fair questions might be pretty tricky for me. I don't know. So we'll see. You know, one day I'm sure it'll come up, and we'll finally find out if everybody loves the Winslow boy.
Oof. It's a big category, and like you said, it's very underused, and I wish to see more of it. You know, not only just because of us, but I know Stacey Howard would be very excited as well. Obviously, now you guys ended up going with Festival Darlings, and famously so. This is also a category that
there's some history.
Tom unwisely threw it at some opponents that I feel like it was not the wisest call to throw it at Alonzo and Whitney.
Alonzo and Whitney Seibold? Yeah. Maybe not.
I mean,
no, really, but Kate didn't know. Kate didn't know.
But they're critics. I mean, they're both professional film critics. Those are going to be up their alley. I was in a match against Alonzo once where he got Hitchcock. It wasn't directly my fault, but he got Alfred Hitchcock, and he raced through that category. I've never seen
he was so proud.
Anything like it in the Showdown, where as soon as the questions were asked, he was just knocking them down. It was ridiculous.
And he answered the question. He's like, "Oh, it's this." You know,
it's that.
The one quote that he got that I remember just being like, "Come," because it wasn't even that he got there. It was that he got there immediately was the name of the manor in Rebecca. And before the question was even done being answered, it was like Manderley. And I was like, Manderley! That rolled off the tongue that quickly. Manderley!
That's not fair.
I like Rebecca. It's a good movie, but come on, it was so fast. It was like he was waiting for it.
That's not fair.
Impressive. It is very impressive. So, Festival Darlings, we ended up accepting it, obviously.
The first time they said Manderley, I got like upset again. Like, Manderley, here we go.
I do want to take a second to highlight some things over in the chat. You know, there's a little bit of love for, some Eagle Eye. So I just want to put that out there. Now, I do want to ask, UK Gucci is asking, thanks so much for Gucci to hang out. Lon, do you prefer playing as the professor or as the delinquent? And I do want to clarify, as far as the character, when you're actually playing in the match, which one do you prefer playing as?
No contest, the delinquent. The delinquent's way more fun. It's easier. I mean, I think that's the thing is like, I don't really have to focus on being the delinquent. It's really just, it's pretty easy to put that persona on and just go. The professor, I had to constantly be thinking of things to say because he's talking in a different tone, you know? He's like using,
Right.
Yeah, he's got, I mean, prop work is always fun. I like the pipe. The pipe is a fun prop to use, but
It's a great prop.
Thinking of references. I got to be talking in this kind of elevated way. And so it's a lot trickier to do in the moment. And when I'm really trying to think about the trivia, there were definitely times where I wish I didn't have so much character stuff to worry about as well. Both times I made the mistake of picking very warm costumes. Like I want to do a character where he's like a beach bum, or it's like somebody who's from the tropics. Because I keep picking like flannels and sport coats and wool hats, and it's not as bad when you're just in my apartment, but in the studio it gets very hot. So that was an oversight on my part. But it is definitely more fun to be the delinquent, and I like that a lot better. And I don't think I would want to go back full time to be the
Yeah, I imagine it's a lot easier for you to just like really focus on the game and a little bit less so on the on the character as much, like you said.
Yeah,
now
even things like one of my bits that I thought was really funny that I like to do is I would mess up everybody's name, like I would mispronounce, like try to elevate the pronunciation of everybody's name. But that means that before you refer to literally anybody, you have to think of a funny way to say their name, which is like, you don't think about that in the moment, but when you're doing it and you're trying to answer trivia, and it's like, it's too much sometimes in the moment. And then the delinquent doesn't have to, I can pretend to, like, I can forget your name and it's funny as the delinquent. So
it's even better probably. I'm like, if
it plays.
Like
the infamous Mulan incident, like that's funny because of the character I've established, whereas as the professor, I'd have to like cover for it. Whereas as the delinquent, I'd be like, yeah, I'm not paying attention. That's exactly.
I do want to highlight for a split second, one of my favorite moments in the entire match was a split throwaway moment that we actually already had. Can you pull up to the in my skin or in her skin question?
Oh,
so it was the last question. Under the skin, yes, thank you. Under the skin. So it was the last question that came up.
The last question in round 2?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The last question in Festival Darlings.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we both knew it right away. And
it's my favorite moment.
Let's get that rolling. There we go. So they're about to ask that last question.
And I don't think Paul and I have like discussed this movie specifically before. Obviously, we're both big fans.
You guys are like having a moment
of recognition when we each saw that the other one obviously knew it, and there's that moment of like,
awesome.
Because there's like a few levels of knowing things in terms of this showdown. There's like, I know this 100% on lock. This is definitely the right answer. And then there's gray shades of like, well, I think I know it, but like, like where I was with Julian Schnabel or whatever. So that was the moment of recognition of like, oh, we both know for sure that this is ScarJo. It's one of my favorite recent movies. Like, I'm really a big fan of it. So
I'm scared to watch it. I've heard a lot of great things about it, but I'm like, I'm very intimidated because I've been told it's very I've been told it's a very highbrow, artsy movie, and when people tell me that, I feel like it's like I don't feel like I'm like cool enough to see it.
It's really not that artsy. I mean, if you break it down to the story it's telling, it's just like a pretty simple sci-fi kind of story. It's like not. Yeah. It's just you got to kind of give it. You got to give it some time. I think that's a lot of people go into movies sometimes with that. If it's 5 minutes, if it's 10 minutes, and that's what movies train us to do. Like screenplay format is just like by minute 7, you got to know who the hero is and what he wants, And I think when movies don't play by those rules, people feel like, is this me? Like I don't get it, or it's talking down to me, or like it's broken in some way, and they assume like that's bad. And if you can get past that feeling and just kind of like let the movie do its thing, I think a lot of the time it pays off at the end.
I totally agree with you there. It's like, just like I said, some movies I get it right off from the get-go, and other movies where I'm like, I don't. I don't get it. Like I can't tell you how many times I've tried watching Inception. I just don't like the movie.
Oh,
I don't get
honey.
it. No, I've seen it 5 times. I can tell you about the symbolism. I can tell you all the film references. I can tell you exactly what it is. I can tell you everything about the movie. I will look at this and I'm like, oh wow, Nolan, he's doing another timey-wimey movie where they're all the same things on identity, perception, and what is time, what is
Interstellar.
what is real. Yeah, it's all the same thing, and I'm just annoyed by the end of the movie, and I'm like, this is.
I like Inception, but it's not so much that it's like you're not getting it. It's like it's convoluted. Like
you have to really pay. Yeah, you have to really pay attention, and I figure out something different each time I watch it.
I don't. I'm bored.
Disorienting and convoluted on purpose. And that's not getting it. That's just like, like I'm in a twisting hallway of mirrors.
Well, Lon, that's the thing. I've been told that I just don't get it. That's why I don't like it. I've been told that numerous times by a bunch of asshats.
If I tell you, like they take drugs to go night, and then they jump into other people's dreams and mess around, like that's all that's happening. It's just different layers of messing around.
Yeah,
it's not complicated. It's just convoluted.
Exactly. It's exactly. Not fun to,
it's a lot of fun, but that's not one to feel like. You don't have to really sit and ponder Inception. It doesn't really hold up.
Yes, absolutely.
Ponder like Uncle Boone Me who can see his past lives. That's perfect.
That's very true. Let's bring back Mr. Nobody. All right, we are going to be going into our the final round of the match. Well, the final round for one team.
Great.
They're wonderful guys. They're great guys.
Yes. And just a quick reminder where the score is. If I can pull it is like 24-31, and that is a huge point difference. That is a 7-point deficit. Going into this.
Nice. So it puts the pressure on your opponent, which is always where you want to be in late stages. Like the 2 questions are sometimes hard. 3-pointers are usually hard. 5-pointers are always hard. So you never want to be in a situation where you have to answer most or all of your round 3s. I mean, sometimes it happens, but it's tough to count on knowing that 5-pointer. Like there have been some where I've known them right away, and there have been some where it's like never in 100,000 years. And sometimes it really does depend on your specific area of expert knowledge. Like if it happens to you pick a number that corresponds to a category that you know well, you're going to get it. And if it doesn't, you're not. Ben Bateman, on a recent backstage that someone sent me, was talking about this. He and I were in a match together, and I got a 5-pointer that he knew right away that I didn't know, which was who plays the, I think, DEA agent or CIA agent, whatever, who plays the main villain in Drop Zone, that Wesley Snipes movie. And I remember that's the movie that Wesley Snipes is in. But I may never have even seen it. But I had no idea, like not even a guess as to who that might be. And he was like, I knew it was Gary Busey right away. I love that movie. And like, whether or not that's an impossible to answer question is purely like, do you remember that movie? So you never want to be in a position where you're going to get asked a question at random and it needs to fall into one of those kind of areas that you know. It's a game,
right.
Exactly. You just never know what you're going to get with these questions. And, the category...
right here, I mean, that's if you are like JTE probably knows this because he's a Stallone aficionado, and I'm sure he's seen Lock Up many times. So for him, that might not seem like a 5-pointer, but for, a civilian who this was Paul's right when he said in the post, this is like a forgettable period in Stallone's career,
This is a true 5-pointer question. We've talked in the past how, like, when it comes to the 3rd round questions, it's very subjective. Like, speaking honestly, what is the real difference between a 2-pointer and a 3-pointer? What's a 3 and a 5-pointer? What is the real difference? And it's and these are really, it's all subjective at the end of the day. And
I think
go ahead. Oh, this is a 2-pointer for some people, but this is a 5-pointer for someone else. So you just never know what you're going to get. It's all the luck of the draw.
Which I think makes sense is like the movies. Like a movie like Lock Up is fairly obscure. A movie like Drop Zone maybe not that well remembered. Not that they weren't notable in their day. They had a marketable star. They were from a notable director, but time has not necessarily kept them at the top of our minds. And I think that makes sense. And I think that's where the writers seem to be going these days, is that as the difficulty increases, the movies become more and more obscure and outside of our mainstream, where our heads are kind of at.
Yeah,
so that's where you get Lock Up as opposed to
like, how often did a movie like this come up in conversation, like, at all, if ever? Yeah, there was a little bit. I just want to highlight a comment real quick, from Weston Iro. At least, eggs of desperate mothers were eaten in this match. So
goodness gracious, that poor child. That poor child.
We don't have to get into Egggate at this point. I think Egggate.
That poor child just is getting, for one moment, he is just getting completely defaced. But I will leave that out of this discussion.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, well, that actually wraps up the match itself. Yeah, that wraps up the match itself. We went through the Dewberry rounds, the spin is in, and some sexy numbers. We are going to be we're going to be wrapping things up with a nice little bow, honestly. We are, since we have a guest tonight, we have a bunch of stuff going on tonight, obviously, with guys, I'm so excited for tonight, which is, the Schmodown Throwdown between Video Drew, our homegirl Video Drew, going up against Jen Kemp in her singles debut, and also a big match between
the Wildberries.
The Wildberries.
Son Josh Makuka versus
exactly. Yeah, no big deal. Okay, so real quickly, before we kind of wrap things up and kind of let everyone know what we're doing, where we're going, and all that good stuff, I kind of want to, starting with as our guest, Lon, kind of want to know from you, what are you thinking? Who's going to win tonight? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, well, I got to pick Drew for the undercard. She's been training a lot. She's really put a lot of thought and a lot of prep into this match. So I'll be pulling for her. Look for a victory there. Honestly, Makuka versus Dewberry, as much fun as people have with the Wildberries, they're no slouches in the movie trivia game. This is actually a pretty competitive. I feel like these are two pretty balanced competitors who both know their stuff. Makuka was sort of he was kind of Stacey Howard before Stacey Howard, where you think maybe they're on the ropes and then crazy pull out of nowhere, happens to know it really well. So
he beat Clark Wolf.
That's a tough
one.
Clark
Wolf, y'all.
That's
he beat a former team's champion.
And when it comes down to it, I think my swag faction mate is going to pull it out. So I'm going with Makuka.
Okay, Makuga and Drew.
Our whole season may be riding on this match. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
Very tightly competitive race at this point for the top faction. You need all these points. So I really am hoping that Makuga brings this home.
And also for your faction, obviously, you guys are having a really solid TKO that gave you guys also a 3-point increase for as a faction. So that's pretty awesome.
Nice, yeah. At this point, we're down to only a few factions at the top that are really still in this race.
Right.
So for those
you mean like the dungeon's not going to make it like a random climb to the top?
Unlikely.
Or the usual suspects? What?
Yeah, so those of us in the very, very tippy top rankings are paying a lot more attention.
Exactly.
We'll see what happens.
You never know. And Meg, so what are you betting on today?
So my thoughts on the undercard, I definitely would like to see Video Drew come out with that. I just can't. I don't know Jen Kemp well enough. She was decent in her debut there in IG. But not really knowing what her what she has coming into singles, she could surprise us. But I really want to see Video Drew take that out. And the Wildberries, I think Elliot has shown a little bit more consistency, but I think I would like to see. I'd like to see Josh pull this one out. So I'm going to go with Makuga as well.
Y'all are weenies. That's what I'd say about that.
Come on. What can you do?
Weenies.
What are you doing?
My answer would have to be, I have to agree with you here as far as I would go with Video Drew personally, not only because, I just know how much she's studying and everything, but we just know a little bit more about her strengths, her weaknesses, obviously, but she's also much more confident on screen versus Jen. This is a very new situation for her. She hasn't played since summer, and that was an IG match. It was a very different ballpark situation over there versus singles and teams. Now, for the Wildberries match, I'm going to go with Elliot. And the reason I say Elliot because there's a reason why we call it a dewberry round. Okay.
There is.
And
it is.
Yeah. Yes, he was the first one to get a perfect. Oh, maybe he wasn't. I thought he was, but I guess he wasn't.
No, I don't
know.
I
thought he was.
I can't remember.
I see that stuff to Oyama. That's what he knows. I don't know that stuff.
It's been a while. It's been a bit. For some reason, I had in my head that he was the first one to do it, but I digress. But
I think I don't think he was necessarily the first, although he may be. I'm not as well versed in that way back history, but
for a while, yeah.
We've called it the dewberry, so something was historic about him getting a perfect round. So yeah. But yeah, no, I can't.
That guy's a very smart guy. He knows a lot of movie trivia. I came up against him this year, and it was a very competitive match. And so you never count him out. I just feel like Josh knows how much is riding on this for Team Swag, and he's going to pull it together.
Yeah, it's. I also kind of feel
dance his way to another victory.
You never know.
That's the thing.
They both have so much going on individually. Some part of me is like wondering whether or not both of them might end up retiring and be like, you know what, where both of them might be like, you know what, I don't want to do this without you. Let's retire into the distance and dance together into the sunset. I could easily picture them both retiring.
I used to think that more when this was first in the offing, when we were first behind the scenes talking about the Wildberries in some way breaking apart, coming together, having some kind of match. I thought, it's going to be like a big glorious send-off. But the closer that we get to it, I feel like they're really enjoying this now. And I wouldn't necessarily say give it a few months away. They don't want to in some way come back, reunite, some other storyline. Like, I wouldn't say it's impossible at this point. Who knows?
Yeah.
I have no more behind the scenes info than anyone else at this point.
Regardless, these are both two fantastic competitors, two iconic competitors that I would be sad to see go regardless. But I'm excited to see this kind of go down with all the I don't want to say anxiety, but with all the craziness, with all the high stakes matches from the teams tournament, the singles tournament, everything. I'm excited to see more of a fun, a few matches. Yeah. That's for sure. I'm excited for a little bit of story and character more than numbers crunching and all that stuff. So guys, we're gonna. Yeah, so that's pretty good. And not to mention, did you guys see those promos? They were so good. Oh my gosh, they were so good from both of the competitors.
The digital promos have been on point this year.
On point. Okay, guys, we are wrapping things up today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and diving into this match between the final exam and Tom and Paul. And guys, not only to everyone that were in the chat, but our wonderful guest, Lon Harris, the delinquent. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
I'll respond to either name. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we will see you again in the near future when you go up against whoever
either
you will be going to
the Witching Hour or Founding Fathers. We don't know yet. I know, you guys don't know, so I'm not going to say.
I'm praying it's the Witching Power. Praying.
You want to see the Founding Fathers go down in flames?
No, it's not that. It's just that they're such a new team. They're just such a new team, and they're an interesting duo. We don't really know all that much about them, and
you like seeing things getting shaken up. I like it.
Yeah, what me?
You want drama, honey. I know you.
No, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, guys, thanks so much again. We are going to be doing these breakdowns the day of or the day after for all these matches, and we want to know your feedback on some of our new segments, such as match thesis and match by numbers, etc. So if you have any constructive criticism, any of that good stuff, please let us know in the comments below. But like and subscribe to this video, and we'd really, really appreciate it. All right, Lon, where can we find you, your beautiful face, and everything Taco is doing?
Taco's sleeping right now, as per usual. Oh, he just picked up his head as I said his name. So you can find me at LONS on Twitter, Lons. That's where I sort of post about everything I'm working on. And also, if you like podcasts, if you like streaming shows and films, follow my new podcast with Hal Rudnick. It's called Binge Boys. You can find that on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all the big podcasty places. We talk about, what's going on new in the world of streaming. I'm watching A Teacher on Hulu right now. We're going to talk about that this week along with some other stuff. Kate Mara, she's a teacher. Who doesn't want to see that? So check that out. And that's about it for me.
She is grooming a high school-year-old boy, potentially, from what I've seen of the trailer.
That's what it's about? I thought it was just teaching. No, that's
of course. Like
that is what it's about. It's correct.
Totally about grooming. All right, awesome. Yeah, the Binge Boys. I will also add that to the description box to make it a little bit easier if you're catching this later on. So thanks so much. And Megs, where can I find you? Beautiful face and all those awesome stats, girl.
So you can find all the stats at the MTS Facebook page as well as the faction pages. I will post them in there, as well as I also put them on my personals in Instagram and Twitter, and that is Megs_reclaimed. So you'll see kind of a mix of the stats as well as some of the things that are going on in my life currently. So check that out if you so desire. And you can always find me here on Call to Action doing breakdowns with this lovely lady here. And where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at real_AlexMeck. You can also find me hosting Schmobates, including a very special Schmobate tomorrow, where it's going to be all about Kevin Smets. Guys, if you're not familiar with Kevin Smets, what's going on with him, he's going through a very, very difficult time right now with him and his very, very new baby family, no pun intended, that precious little wee lad, And we're doing something special for him, and them and the family called the Smash-a-thon. It's starting tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central. A whole bunch of amazing things going on. Interviews, games, competitions, a whole bunch of stuff. So definitely come hang out. Even if you're not a fan of Schmodown, even better. There's a whole bunch of stuff for you. We're going to talk about everything across the board, so definitely stay tuned for that. The schedule is as follows. We have everything going on starting from, like I said, at 3 p.m. in Pacific, starting with some happy hour stuff, with Frank Janish, Mark Ellis, and Roca. I have my show mobates right after. Machine Mondays, you have Gucciverse. We have Sunday Unwind, Schmoes of the North, the closeout. IG Family Feud, hosted by Rachel Cushing and Maxwell Haddad. So that's going to be a really guaranteed fun time. And we also, as a result of that whole thing, we actually have a message from Kevin Smets himself.
All right. Hey, I just wanted to thank you guys. I wanted to do this quick video and thank you for all the support. As you can see here, Smashing Cancer and the fundraiser. You guys don't realize that you're saving my life, literally, and I'll explain why. As I'm walking down here, actually, to go into my radiation chamber here. You guys are saving my life because there was a time where we were thinking, next year I'm going to have to try to balance working with my treatment, especially the hardcore chemo. Kevin Smets, Pelvis, April 6, 1979. This is my man James right here. He's setting me up. You have to say that you have to make sure they put the right lasers in the right place.
Exactly.
Anyways. You guys are saving my life because I don't have to worry about that next year. I could take the time off of work to heal and to get better and get the rest. And that's the most important thing for me. And so for that, I'm forever indebted to you because you guys are literally putting my family and you're lifting my family up and you're saving my life, each and every one of you. So the Smash-a-thon is happening this weekend and I just can't believe you guys are doing that and I'm forever indebted to you. And, this is from Janine, a special Smash-a-thon hoodie, and I love you guys from the bottom of my heart. You guys are saving my life, just like these guys are saving my life. And I'm gonna go into this chamber right here, like Darth Vader, And again, thanks again for everything you've done. I'm rambling here because I kind of lost track of what I was trying to do. But I just want to say that to the fans, you're the greatest on the planet. And you guys are literally changing my life and saving my life. So I'm going to get in here and make like Darth Vader, or hopefully Bruce Banner, and not turns into something green. All right.
Oh,
Amazing cause. Every dime that is donated through Super Chat or Streamlabs is going straight to his GoFundMe page to help do things that are really important, like pay bills and pay for groceries and and medical bills and stuff like that, unfortunately. So things gotta, get paid, unfortunately. So we're gonna help every little bit that we can. So definitely stay tuned for that and check out the socials for more details and in the description box below. But guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow. But keep watching movies and, wear a mask. Wear a mask, please, for the love of God.